년치 전부는 힘이죠. 돈을 모는 심보는 비었다. 바크다 감산도 싫음. tumba turji janla kisham sar denip jondandi denip jondandi la janju zanwa jimbo karmi gerbu meto kundir jibam ngumbr shipender kchip kapsa do jondandi ji la tar janju zanwa jimbo mandi gerbu jikten ji kamam jenda narjiwa dan devjon sopanda ka kepeshia chochu gerton mambo da mambo da jondin de kang tuba la dan no jindan zha dan la mayan dan ka dan magam che dan to shi jimbo dan ma dan ma yin ba nam da jikten ji kang jan ne la ba jan zu zang wa jimbo nam dan nyang do jimbo de da kha tu ni tham chi de gam ge ye ran jang yi de ver ge re jan zu zang wa jimbo man ji jar bo sho ba gang che la chuk ji gam de jang sha ba de jang ba yang do bo sang ji ji log bra sha tok sur de ne jong den de ji jan zu zang wa jimbo gar mi ger bo me do kan de ji ba ngum bra shi ba la sur da bram chen ne di che jan zu zang wa jimbo gar mi ger bo me do kan de ji ba ngum bra shi ba ndar ki chep ka sar do ri ji ba ngum shwan de pi ti na ka ra sha Ganga Hongu Jimani Gerwa de Ize na Division Sobarab Jamba on the Barzo San Geruk Badan Jazo Damba de Rosabanjit and Kimberti and the Rakal of Gero Lana Balada Manam Gitomba San Gibjon and the near that Mame Pigo Huarin Shah and Jitin the Shunte, Carmi Gerbometo Contiba Mumbra Shiba, Division Sobarab Jamba on the Barzo San Ge, near that Mame Pigo, the Huarati, Shan Chevasan Hua. 시와 야치 디바 침보 숑오 건거홍 건거홍 든 저자니 디시만니 디년투 디바도 숑오 디 담발라는 메메퍼티도 심장냐와도 돈루티네도 예덕던 하마인디리 메도 상지지 장양 랑터다듬 냠장 냠가르 제르도 힘빈저야 이트비 사조 rumboche당 잔든지 존상 gemba rumboche tawi prewa tarji dadum ngumbarabtarwa rumboche po porne de pu de ba rumboche jonshang jong tamjana rumboche kartin darjang anga tsatsama shibado rumboche kartin tamji jitang liwa shia chochu jernom jomne de onzo wadab jamba onzo barzo basar jine da chama me biwar chubru shia shirda sarni shia jang phagdo ba dang rurmu jamjin jang khodo jomne de ji yang shanju sangwa chimbo semchen tamji jim tonam ngumbarga lef tsamte tambi chupa makaru chuji namjang de nyandu jimbo de do dang shanju sangwa jimbo de dagla jeber tonto karmi jerbo me tok kundir jeba ngumbar shiba jomne de de onzo wadab jamba onzo barzo basar jine da chama me biwar ji khar di tsetne karwa jit nitong de gerdo shanju sangwa 대덕당 냥도 전부 대덕 제 이찬 대점도 겨르도 장주 상화 전부 샘천의 탐점 통하가 대용들다 존든데 디송으로 가시 발업 좀 버결데 로니트니 로치니 동란 저라 지정 존지 침부 잠베 남주랍 존데 데네로 니지 동데네 그 탐지의 양덕 버튼 바집샤비 당한자는 지대 당한전 데레 토마토도 장주 상화 좀 전부 매진 탐지 팀 통하고 샘진 탐지 샘진
Was this retyped or what? Everything was retyped from scratch.
No. 别人那可以应该是샘진是吧샘진 탐지 팀 통나가 di zem ge de yiran arab da ga jang ga yid de ver ke ne di zem der nyam de sem de tam bi chu ba ma kar wo chu jin nam jang da la ten de zong tam ji de yang da ber dong ba ji je dang zin de ge tu so nyam mo di ze jang de zong wa zong wa jin bo sem chen tam ji ji im dong na ga wa lan de nyam de sem de der de ge de jang so ba de zhen ba yang da ber zo ba san ji nir da zhen ma mi bi gu ji hua re dan bi chu ba ma kar bu chu ji nam jang dam chu ber ja wo di ze na dang zhen de la nyum ber ji de jang zong wa jang jin bo tam ji 도나게와 당긴진나 뉴엄버지바 타다 디 몰라르탄가 남칼라 메동 만다라도 만다라 침보동 리메도고 쳇침봉으로 와보 디 지슴정 짠든지 지시데 짠들 지지님부 쳇침봉 옴버가르테 카미 야르부 매도 건들 집에 문브르시바 데이터 부지 남바 어저 니지 런던지든지 감문지 저 니지런 저 니지런던 지든지 감문지반도 뭐저고 그러면 집에 매도 건들 집에 문브르시바 되는 정성 전부 탐칠 임통나 가와 잠바던 단상 시비전的当然在来朗所朗内讲的샘대 절들 리용스 따르나 잠들지 좀들도 좀 던데람 추버지바 마이노 냐모 카르마 디아르보 메도 건데 집에 몸브라시바 되는 전성화 전부 샘천 탐치 짐 통나가와 디체나 아라라당 떠라당 보그 그와 자장 잠바그 마리앙통 스카르미 디아르보 메도 건데 집에 몸브라시바 남정도 전성화 전부 전 탐지 짐 통나가와 떠더 부자장 잠바그 마리앙 통외 롭증인데 버지르도 스카르미 디아르보 메도 건데 집에 몸브라시바 되는 전성화 전부 샘천 탐지 짐 통나가와 롭증이 된데네 런가 리 리지 건더 지님 점르지 짐르시데 더기 신기 라브르시소 더기 신기 라브르시네 대전서 당 담비조 마마카르부 추지 남정덤 추브 리지 시르데 더기 리라 멤버르시소 멤버르시소 카르미제르보 메도 건더 제바랍도 시바랍도 옴브르시바 데니 장주송와 쳔보 샘선 담지 짐토나가베 리지 마르메군 바르부 고티 직텐지 감건걸롱 고시마니 캬브르 쩌르데 직텐지 감테다 선집 존던데 건걸롱 고시마니 탐치드 러브르시소 지르죠 락소 리게원 다나 장주송와 쳔보 相就三花全部南极总之三巴拉样得火的种小班就巴当就巴拉样得巴的没多当对不当不当长话当修巴当什么当南沙当对当江森当里瓦登金就巴当上升咁就巴当咱的之今天不就巴的的马云诺这个机会人把那么巧的家这用所动物人把的那的他马云诺我当从没旁边用所动物人把的样的他马云诺这个机会刚大个里动物去进초반도 남 초바 차버잖아 담바고 초고 퍼로 겐 논바고 그러면 보면도 근데 집에 몸버를 시바 상제 좀던데 되다가 되겠지 송네 되니 멍 대이정 막송버 지르도 그러면 보면도 근데 집에 몸버를 시바 전투성화성 전부 탐지 짐통나가 리라 바르바 롭지니 게와르드 제버 마송오 시 롭지니 엔데네 제버 저르도 감미제 보면도 근데 집에 몸버르시바 장성화성화 젬보 샘전 탐지 짐통나가와티 대정 서반더 람초반다 추짐 초버르시바 데네 심분의 정도의 대원서 바접 좀 방도 버르도 산게 녀다 좀 비고티 화르기 손으로 제버 좀 매버 신지 텐데 점더 제대 제모종 제전다 제모종 제전다 방버지데 예버 겨도 전성화 젬보 샘전 담지 짐통나가 티마타다 그가 체나 파 말라 측습자바 들기지 메바 잔종도는 더적 당차장 데르네다 당전토 다가 림팡 용당데 손지 잡점 뜨르지치 갈미제 보면도 견데 제번 몸르지바 데네 장수성화 젬보 샘전 담지 짐통나가위 측습자바 대 매네 런거 파말란 더크지 야 존던데 강라 더금 추버르제네 자탐질람 기비 존토죠 담비주 바마카르부 추질 남전진데 측습잡아 시와 착추야 동담바당 츠바당 만츠바르 시와 야지 존던데 투버르 겨버 존던데 당서버 좀 방도 버도 산지 녀다르 마메 버고티 화르데라 다르터양 지된 소장 지게 야 더 존던데 디 존던 치나 럭소 데름 치네양 존던데 데람 추버르 교고지 메소 가미 제범에도 근데 기범 문브르 시바 되네 정성서 전부 샘전 담지 짐 통나가와 디체남 칼라 상달랍 든잠도 문브르 박데 름보치 나든지 컴밥서 버키르모 좀 제네 존던데 디 중的送的全巴当존던데 자람고 상자데 존던데 라 란던도 코라시데 존던데 칼라와데 로스 타르모 제르던 존던데 라 상자데 측습자반도 또 버르시소 가 오마와 존도 드메다 자라 조진더나 교디고즈름지 대서 졸라 덕금 조지 정 곰보르타비 라도 당더름지 카르미 제르보메도 근데 제범 곰브라시 바티체 장저선화 선화 쳔보 샘전 담지 짐 통나가위 측습자바 데르게 질메데 되네 존도데 당와서 버도 좀 방도 버도 산지 Nirda Jamami Buguti, Huarland, Kirkich Sordo, John de Jonadon, Gila Summer, Carbi, Jerbometo, Mumbershiba, Tene, Tejan Sabat Jambayan, the Vorzo San Ye, Nirda Jamami Buguti, Huar Shansu Sanwa Jimbo, Simpson Tam Jim Tona Gaval, Kirkich Gasardo, Rigiva, Nayon Samyan and Pitila, the Rigiva, Nat says a Pitila, Rigiva, Chola, Chodo Son la, Ni, Chu, Shomshi, Nayon Samyan and Dago, Carmi Jabometo, Mumbershiba, John the Towns of a judgment of San Dian, the Jamamibo, Woody Huardi, Shancho San Hua Jembo, Tamchin Tona, Gava, Tela Tirkichi Gasa, Rigiva, Tambandalanga, Yons of Tado, Shansu Sama Jembo, Chudin, Shansu Sama Jembo, Dadadan, Yantu Jimbo, Dadadan, Santi Shanchim, Dadadan, Santi Shanchim, Dadadan, Jitinji Kam, Dadadan, Rumbo Chim, Castin, Dadadan, Rumbo Chair, Jonshan, Dadadan, Nimker Shepi, Heaven, the Namjan Yons of Tado. Rigiva, Nayon some young Lindy, Rancher Gang in Bate, Yon Sortado, Rigiva, Rancher like Chuji, Choba, Catcher, Shushi, Rancher, Dead of Giver and Gerard, Kishi, Shooting Tonchombo, Kishi, Carmichael Rometo, and the Gumber Shiba. Then John the details about Jabjan by Underwords of something that Guti, what go the Huaraji, Shantu Sama Jim Simpson, Tamchi Jim Tona, Gava, Tela, Gis, Tane. Di Nemo, Namgi Charmed la Pombolama, maybe Nyangan Debi, Yans, Nyangan Debi, Yansam, Nyangan Deso, Nyangan Debi, Yansam, Nyangan Deso. Carmi Japometo can give a Mumbraji, but any Johnson, Jimbo, Simpson, Tamchi, Jim Tonaga, John the Dance of near Dajam, or the young Sam, young and they better read the Sand and Jiggy, young Pony. Division shall be scuffed, division shall be good. By Jever Rigne, Rancher D, the Nurjan, Chung, Damnet, making on Dondo, Carmi Japometo can give a Mumbraji, but any Johnson, Jim Simpson, Jim Tonaga, need the Chung, Damnet, making on Dondo, which is not them given by. Yatra Jerton shed the Jigme, Data Conanda, there shall be rancher Jig, the Rumbochi, Nav, Dungi, Churten, per the Tambin Jitin Latiba, Du, Bam Chawa, Lugber of Yamba, Tang, Tardan, Jiri, Lugber of Yambi, Yatra Jerton, she saw, the children did of Shane, the Yam dozen. Some del Duck of Jordan, they near that may be good. Huara Dejan Sabi, Kurdon Lam, Chuban, the Shina, Tivijan, Labachi, Jatan Pabe, Dejan Sabi, Ranger, Chubra, she is of Nyamor, Carmija Bometo, Condiva, Mumbrisiba, Tension, Jimbo, Simpson, Tamji, Jim Tona Gavati, Simpson, Tamji, Jim Tona Gavati, Tamjan, Dambi, Jansu, Hui, so they don't young to Jimbo, they don't have the Notion that Jazan, Lama, and the Lamka, down the Mam General Jimbo, Mam Gigi, so they don't have Meba, Giver, Kichaki, John the Rancher, Lam Chubra, Shushi, Sam Shir, Carmija. Metal can give a Mumbrasiba, and Johnson Jimbo Simpson, Tamchi, Jim Tona Gavati, the Johnson beam shooting, Yatra Jerton Boom, then the Rangalaba Sunum give Yambati, Barrashi, the Barrashi be low. Dunton Nistunga, but the Dejan Sabala, shooting, Dejan Sabat, Dedalam, Chopa, she saw. The name Chopa, she being courted on Yantu Tame, Basha, Church, Tom Chapterlo, Shansu Sanwa Tamchi, Shansu Sanwa Tamchi, Zip Tamchi, the Yantaberton be Tangans and Tober, Gerdo. Carmi Gerbo Metocon the Given Mumbershi, ba, Tene Tamsi dan Dambi, Janju Sanhua, So Dedan, Yantu, Jimbo Deda, Shanju Sanhua, Jimbo, Simpson Tamji Jim Tona Gavati, Yan Matsan, Tony. Nide Chungip Dabner, Ming on Donjang, Chilak, Dirkit, made the Chucker Luhan Jesus Tomba Janju Sanhua, Jimbo, Simpson Tamji Jim Gumbergavan, Dirter, Tayan Matsan, Lagba, Meber, Girdo, Gizerdo. Carmi Jarbo Metoconder Giba Mumbrasiba, and Jansawa Jimbo, Simpson Tamchi Jim Tona Gavadi, Shansusawa Jimbo, Dedodan Yanto, Dedodan Laiva, Dedolat Meba, Rigiva the Ko, Yanla, Nyambaram Tonga Mangaji, Chungi Mandevji, Smithing of Mandonji, Rigiva, Kyoto Shukjinji, Tenji Kamtamabivan, Tagana, Sanji Jondan. Quand on a dit que soit j'ai besoin de John de Tamje, coup, Juan de Jarte, Dédacafien, Dembi Fingi Labo, Demba de Dembi Tsikunga, Darka, Larba, des gens sur Balam, Chubillon, Tanwe, Darka lire, Serdi, Kato de Djerve, Demba dans Dembi Tsidi, Darka Larban de Mundi, Mundi, Vien de Djerju, Sachimbon de Yan Lorju, Yober Djerju, Varnon, la Nebil, Hever, Namdi. 메토크 차르 쳔보 보브르 기슈 시소 karmijepo 메토크 지바 ngumbre 시바 데니 장송아 쳔보 셈센 담지 짐 통나가와티 뎀베 신집라바 동숨지 동침보 직된지 감다다 나바 찌도 요소 스탄가 와르나레 메토크 쳔보 바브르셔도 샹주성와 쳔보 셈센 담지 짐 통나가와티 럭바테양 дыртарап шансынва чимбо нитти сонум гирто кебада иси гирто кебати хун чиртав жанда гирдор карми гербо мумржиба мумбржиба дице дидена шансынва чимбо семжен тамжи жинтона гаважи шавыр гервады инда нямда сомни гам егни гам тецомда гернар карми гербо метог гындыр геба мумржиба чоги дертер муставо те жишерда женар карми гербо 메토 근들 지병은 브라지 바 장성아 젬보 만지 겨보더니 디제나 장성아 젬보 샘전 담지진 통나가 집샤브르 겨도 갈미 겨보 메토 근들 지바 문브르지바 샘전 담지 지만지 겨보 시아 척추 겨동저디 녀도 시에도 리용소 동으로 시에도 갈미 겨보 메토 근들 지바 문브르시바데 리기오 모 장주성 takbalal ji bablana me bayan topor zoba shanchiblan do be de jong sabin churten de daglar kan teung barwal sheso lobi sormo kan bi sormo chigam yanlig chigam lo ban barwal sheso shansan ji rigiw mo de do la sunum ngomber ji be chimang de ke do ya zhe yong zi dan we de ta ma yan no Tirta Mayon, Yom the Jomadan, Vadon, Upo, Yonsabdan, Tirta Mayon, Tonsum Jirton, Jimajitini Kamna, Naxerdam Jibi, Yamso Dam Jibi, Radam Jibi, Wabjadam Jibam, Sodam Sigadam Jibadam, Trumadam, Kangaradam Jiba, Yonsabdan, Tirta Mayon, Karmi Jabo, Metokund, Jibam Gumbra Shiba, Regio, Mokana, Shantusan, Tapala, Tapajiba, Tonsum Jirton, Jimajitini Kam. rinpoche nafdan jirabda kambarshi de sanje dan shanchu sanwa dan nyanto dan rang sanje tamchilab jimbarshi nar karmi gyarbo kanda jebe ngombarshi bar gyur mo kanglala di gyur mo kangi tambi chu pa makarbo chujir namjan de le tana tsikjibi tsiksujabak chingzamba di sonum chirni bar keba den de makete di sonum gi ngombarshi ba na tewe chi mangda sha gyur tongsam ji dong jimo ji ni kamdan rinpoche nafdan ji kambarshi de sanje dan shanchu sanwa nyanto dan rang sanje tamchilab jimbarshi na teftar mayanor karmi gi bom ngombarshi ba kanda shi bandar te huirna chu dongdom sodom siga tamchi dina na jamsum chukdo jirwa yano karmi jebo medo kunda jebo ngombarshi ba devjan soba shapim dorde tamchi dina na tambi chupa makaro chujir namjandam chukdo jirwa yano karmi jebo ngombarshi ba kunda medo kunda jebo ngombarshi bandar te huirna rinagbo dan korig chenbo tamchi dina na ribji jirbom chukdo jirwa yano karmi jebo medo kunda jebo ngombarshi 시바 대전의 대전식 송금 돌대 탐지기 나나 담비 주파 막가로 주지 남정도 저부음 촉도 겨와 연어 karmiye pometo kunde jibe ngomber jiba ndartarte khoirna karma 탐지기 나나 다와 고도 shepim 촉도 겨와 연어 karmi pometo kunde jibe ngomber jiba 대전 서바 송김 돌대 탐지기 나나 담비 주파 막가로 주지 남정도 다와 시와 척축야 동 석부고 치임 촉도 겨와 연어 karmiye pometo kunde jibe ngomber 시비 ngomber jiba ndartarte khoirna nimi kiran korji mamba 탐치의 세르 시바 karmiye Gebe meto kanda jibe ngumbara shiba, devjanda tambi chu pa makarwa chujir namjanda yang, magebe mamba tamchid, mannak tamchida sirwa shedor, karmi gebe meto kanda jibe ngumbara shiba, ndarta te khuay nasam chid saksam jil har namji nana gyabshin ji hana wangbo yino, karmi gebe meto kanda jibe ngumbara shiba, devjanda tambi chu pa makarwa chujir namjanda, devjanda shigbi, xumdor de tamchid ji nana wangbo yino, karmi gebe meto kanda jibe ngumbara shiba, 안더타테 회나 멈지기 우덕보 창반 창리기 하담지기 디아르보테 창번직된지 파이 피샤 시에도 갈미기 보면도 근데 제 방문버 시바 대전도 담배 주바마카르부 주지 남정도요 샘친 슬로바다 머슬로바 탐지 냥토동 샹습성회 타발라지바 탐실 샤 시에도 갈미기 보면도 근데 제 방문버 시바 안더타테 회나 gen도 지바다 라치 시르공도 시르모공하나 잡준바 남지 시바 소수기오 남렌 데바예노 karmi jebo meto kanda jeba ngomber shiba devjanda tambe chu pammakar bu chujir namjanda yang devjang shapri songam dorde tamchille yang desham ngomber phagdem chokda jerverik bra shawar karmi jebo meto kanda jeba ngomber shiba dorde ndar jerbonda zanjang semchen tamchi ji xsuwar jerwa rigbra shawar karmi jebo meto kanda jeba ngomber shiba khwerna nyang thodan rangsar je tamchi choji jor karma jarbo me to kana jiba mumbrashi ba tejon da dambi jo chu ba ma karbo chu ji namra te so bi sung gum dor de tamchi ji nam choji shower karma jiba ma to kana jiba mumbrashi ba andar tar te khwe na nyang do na rang sam ji da shang su san wa tamchi ji na te so bi chu ji jarbo ta so wa yo no karma jiba ma to kana jiba mumbrashi ba tejon da dambi chu ba ma karbo chu ji nam jang da shang su san wa te be yang da bar ji ba na la tejon so ba da Java no Karmi Jebu Madukanda Jiva Mumbrashi Badambi Jupa Makaruchi Namran the Simpson Tamji Jigba Tamchi the Juba Dunga Tamchi Tarvar Sheba Kumba Tamchi Lim Su.
It seems like before, just a little bit. I think I'm reading faster and faster now. Have I attained unhindered eloquence? If I could recite Chinese that quickly, it would be better. But Chinese doesn't seem to work that way. I recite Chinese texts rather slowly and not very well. To liberate sentient beings, please generate the supreme bodhicitta before we start today's teaching. Yesterday we finished the chapter on entrustment. According to Kumarajva's translation and the sequence he arranged, today we will teach chapter 23, the chapter on the ancient accounts of Bodhisattva by Sajaraja. This chapter on ancient accounts of Bodhisattva by Sajaraja teaches about many merits. For example, in the records of the Lotus Sutra, there's a story about a woman whose parents both passed away when she was very young. After growing up, she had great faith in the three jewels. She often read various sutras. Once she read the Bodhisattva by Sajaraja chapter from the Lotus Sutra. After reading this chapter, she had a dream that her parents had already been reborn in the pure land of Amitabha. Today is also the Ulambana festival, isn't it? For our parents or for transferring merit to the deceased, if you cannot recite the entire Lotus Sutra, just reciting this Bodhisattva by Sajaraja chapter alone brings tremendous merit. Whether for your own family or relatives and friends, especially when someone has departed from this world, truly for the deceased, they cannot take anything else with them. The only thing that truly benefits them is dedicating merit and virtue to them. This indeed is beneficial to them. That's one example. There are also other stories in the records of the Lotus Sutra. For instance, we often speak of when Master Zhiyi saw that the assembly at Vulture Peak had not yet dispersed. So for this particular episode, actually when Master Zhiyi was reading the chapter on ancient accounts of Bodhisattva by Sajaraja, in his pure vision he discovered that Shakyamuni Buddha was still on the throne and continuously teaching them the Dharma. There's also another story, I believe, from the records of the Lotus Sutra. The previous one was from the Fozu Tongji. Then in the records of the Lotus Sutra, it also says that it seems Master Zhiyi was his reincarnation of the Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja in this chapter. When the Buddha was teaching the Lotus Sutra, there were two great bodhisattvas. One was Huisi and the other was Master Zhiyi. Actually, in their previous lives, Huisi was Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and the Universal Gateway chapter was also heard at that time. As for Zhiyi, he was a reincarnation of Bodhisattva by Sajaraja. This comes from Vinaya Master Dao Xuyun, who often conversed with devas. In his records of conversations with devas, there is such a historical account. In our Han Buddhist tradition, there's actually a long history of reincarnated tulkus as well. Looking at this system and our history, we've had many great masters who were recognized as reincarnations of Avalokiteshvara, Bhaisajaraja, Mahastamaprapta, and Manjushra Bodhisattva. Throughout the history of Buddhism in the Han regions, there have been so many of these great masters. Now let's continue with the chapter on the ancient accounts of Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja. Just a heads up, there won't be a Lotus Sutra class next week. Then probably after the 17th, we'll pick it back up the following week. So for the Lotus Sutra, we have about 4 or 5 sessions left before we're basically finished. That's the plan. Everything should go smoothly from here. I think it's pretty much like I mentioned before. Looking at the remaining text, it might be a little more than we originally planned, but not by much. So in another 3 or 4 sessions, we'll have completely finished the Lotus Sutra, both the oral transmission and the full teaching. I'll be so happy once we truly finish this. When I first started last year, I had a lot of worries back then, partly because of my health and also because of various other factors, both internal and external. I wondered if I'd ever make it to the end. But then again, you never know. There are still 4 classes to go. I really want to finish this as soon as possible. Now let's look at the ancient accounts of Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja. This is chapter 23. At this point, Bodhisattva Nakshatra Raja Samkusumita Bijna appears. We haven't really seen this Bodhisattva earlier in the text, but he steps forward now. He says to the Buddha, "World-honored one, why did Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja come to this Saha world?" This is the question he raised. Since Bhaisajaraja is here, how exactly did he end up in this Saha world? What he's really asking isn't just about this visit, but about his past lives. He asks, "Bhagavat, I've heard that Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja went through countless billions of difficult ascetic practices. He'd heard that in the past, Bhaisajaraja spent a vast amount of time doing these austerities as part of his spiritual cultivation." He said, "Splendid, O Bhagavat. Could you please explain this to us briefly? The Devas, Nagas, Yaksas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Garudas, Kimnaras, Mahoragas, humans and non-humans and so forth, as well as Bodhisattvas and Shravakas who have come from other lands today, they would all be delighted to hear about Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja's past lives. What was Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja like in the past? I've heard he engaged in especially many ascetic practices, and many bodhisattvas and sentient beings would like to know what he was really like." Actually, in the entire narrative that follows, Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja previously made offerings to a Buddha and engaged in ascetic practices for many years. Later he burned his own body. Later he departed from this world. When he was reborn, the Buddha was still in the world, and he continued making offerings to him. Later, after this Buddha entered parinirvana, he made offerings to his reliquary stupa. In his offerings, sometimes he used his own arms, just like the Chan story of severing the arm. He severed both arms, burned his own body, and made offerings in this way. So in order to seek the sublime Dharma and to bring joy to the Buddha throughout many lifetimes, he burned his own body as an offering. This is mainly what today's story teaches. So perhaps some non-Buddhists or those who don't particularly understand Buddhist teachings might have different opinions. But our Buddhism also has its own ways of explanation. Everyone should be able to understand it this way. Now the text says that at this time the Bhagavat told Bodhisattva Nakshatra Raja Samkusumita Bijna. In the past, immeasurable numbers of kalpas equal to the sands of the Ganges River ago, there was a Buddha named Kandraverokana Prabhasashur Tathagata. He possessed the 10 epithets: Arhat, completely enlightened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well-departed, knower of the world, unsurpassed, tamer of humans, teacher of devas and humans, Buddha, Bhagavat. These are the 10 epithets of a Tathagata. This Buddha had 8 billion great Bodhisattva Mahasattvas and a great assembly of Shravakas equal to the sands of 72 Ganges rivers. His lifespan was 42,000 kalpas. The lifespans of the Bodhisattvas were the same. In that land there were no women, no hells, hungry ghosts, animals or asuras, and no sentient beings in the 8 unfavorable states. Actually, in these pure lands, the phrase "no women" does not mean discrimination against sentient beings or against women. It's not like that, because in that place it's actually an extremely pure land where generally all the beings there have no need for what we call the masculine and feminine characteristics in worldly terms, or the pleasures obtained through the physical body. Furthermore, the need for human reproduction in our world is completely unnecessary there. Each person there lives an extremely joyful life, apart from the physical body and our contaminated pleasures. All aspects of life are completely fulfilled. Everyone there is born through transformation in lotus flowers. Now, regarding the beings in these pure lands, from a typical human perspective, we'd think that if a world had no women, it simply couldn't function. For example, when we take taxis, taxi drivers ask us about this more than anything else. By the everyday standards of most people today, it might seem hard to imagine. But the entire structure of a Pure Land and the life within it has its own unique nature that we should try to understand. As for the land we were just talking about, after the Tathagata appeared, his realm was actually as flat as the palm of your hand, perfectly level. It was made of lapis lazuli and other precious gems. There were jeweled trees covered in magnificent canopies, with beautiful banners and streamers hanging everywhere. Jeweled vases and incense burners were found throughout the entire land. High platforms were built from gold, silver, and other treasures. Plus, there was a large jeweled terrace under every single tree. The trees and platforms were spaced just an arrow's flight apart. If we think about the most magnificent places on earth today, I've never been there myself, but I've heard that places like Dubai actually sound a bit like these descriptions of the physical splendor of a pure land. There are plenty of examples like this. So sometimes we humans don't even fully realize how incredible our own world can be. However, I often think that as Buddhists, we should be aware of both. We should understand the magnificent pure lands of the Buddhas, but also understand the world we live in now. It's crucial for us to stay informed about current conditions. We need to know what's going on. In the past, society didn't change much, so Buddhists could generally just stick to their traditional ways of practicing. Many practitioners and monastics lived the same way their whole lives. The world around them didn't really go through any major shifts. But today it's a completely different story. Our entire world has been transformed. For those of us living in quiet, remote mountain valleys, we might have no clue what's happening in the outside world. Things are changing incredibly fast now. When I mentioned Dubai earlier, it reminded me, do you know what they have in Dubai now? Pilotless flying taxis. They say they launched them in July this year, and they are so convenient. You just click a button on a computer and the aircraft arrives. Once it lands, you just hop in. Then you enter your destination and off it flies. Why are they doing this? Partly to show off their wealth and status, but also to avoid traffic jams and all the hassles of the city. So you just go on your own. When you get to where you're going, the aircraft flies back by itself. It returns empty on its own. Then when you're done with your business and you want to call it back, it's just like calling a Didi or a rideshare in the city. Many parts of the world are truly changing at a lightning pace now. It seems that here in China, we went from bike sharing to now sharing high-end cars. BMWs, Mercedes, all kinds of brands. In Shenyang and many other places, car sharing is everywhere. Cities like Wuhan and Beijing are also testing this out now, and it seems to be working quite well. Now, when you board a plane, you don't even need an ID. You just scan your face and go. Physical IDs can be faked after all, but facial recognition is much more reliable. We even have staffless restaurants now, and self-driving cars are appearing in many cities. At a certain point, our world is truly becoming quite inconceivable, and many of us probably don't even realize it. It's just like what's described in the book Homo Deus. Will we really end up as a useless class? As Buddhists, in some ways, we really need to open our eyes and see how much the world is changing. Otherwise, if we keep our eyes closed for too long, by the time we finally look up, the world will be completely unrecognizable. We won't even know how to get around or how to eat. There's a saying in Christianity, actually I've shared that before, so I'll skip it. We might run out of time later. So on the one hand, we need to stay informed about these trends. While understanding the splendor of the Pure Land is essential, as practitioners we also need to keep up with the times. That's why the national education system, from kindergarten all the way to university, has recently pushed artificial intelligence into the curriculum of all higher education. The reason is simple. The entire world is changing just too fast. If we don't catch up quickly, traditional education will be left behind. But in our Buddhist circles, it seems we're far from thinking about AI or anything like that. If we do nothing but chant the Amitabha Sutra every morning and evening and just remain in our own little world, we might run into issues. As I mentioned when I was in Thailand the other day, if AI eventually leaves a vast number of people unemployed, we might see more people choosing to become monastics, which is fine, but there's another side to it. The situation in our Tibetan regions right now isn't great. We used to have a huge number of monastics. For instance, a monastery that once had over 200 monks now only has about 100 or even just 50. The numbers are dropping. Places like Thailand, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka are all facing similar challenges. In times like these, we need to consider what Buddhism will be up against in the future and what kind of reflection and planning we need to do. Throughout our lives, for all of us, especially for you as lay practitioners, if we just keep going the way we are, that's fine. It's relatively simple and pure. But in the long run, what will we as practitioners rely on to face or engage with this world? This is something truly worth thinking about. When we talk about Pure Lands, everything sounds wonderful, but our own world is changing so rapidly that sometimes you see the text just mentioned all those jeweled platforms filled with jeweled trees. Bodhisattvas and Shravakas were under those trees, or on the platforms, each in their proper place. And there were many celestial beings singing and dancing there. It's like a high-class event with beautiful music and dance, all as an offering to the Buddha. And what does it say next? It describes the land of the Tathagata Kandra Vairokana Prabhasashur. That's what his Pure Land was like. At that time, this Buddha, the Tathagata Kandra Vairokana Prabhasashur, addressed the Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana. His name means the Bodhisattva loved by all beings, someone whom every sentient being is eager to see. Anyone who met him felt immediate joy. With this Bodhisattva as the main listener, along with others, the Buddha taught them the Lotus Sutra. Now, this Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana was especially devoted to ascetic practices. In the teachings of the Tathagata Kandra Vairokana Prabhasashara, he was incredibly diligent. The truth is, ascetic practice is very important. Whether you're a lay person or a monastic, you still need a bit of austerity in your life. Don't just think about personal comfort all the time, especially while you are still a student. If you embrace some hardship, you'll find that as you reach a more advanced stage, you'll have made great progress in your practice. If our living conditions are too comfortable, for instance, in some Buddhist institutes nowadays, when the conditions are just too good, it seems the quality of study and practice actually suffers. Once people have money in their pockets, they immediately head to the city to enjoy themselves. Looking back at when we practiced austerities, well, we weren't that extreme compared to the past masters. Our hardships were nothing, but relative to today, it was indeed quite rigorous. Back when we went to Mount Wutai, Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro posted a photo of the two of us today, and it brought back so many memories. At that time, the greatest treat we could have was a can of mandarin oranges. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok wasn't around that day, and the two of us were in his room. We bought 2 cans of mandarin oranges. We thought, today we're really going to live it up. In the past, whenever His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche gave a teaching, sometimes after he finished his lecture, he would eat a can of mandarin oranges, and those of us sitting below him would be watching, really, really craving it. But back then, even 80 cents felt quite expensive, so we generally couldn't afford it. It was out of reach. That day we had them. You can actually see it in that photo. When we look back on it now, it seems like food just tasted so much better in those days. We were also very diligent in our Dharma practice back then. In truth, for many of us, whether you are young or still in the middle of your studies, undergoing some hardship, either physical or mental, is a very good thing. The treatise on the foundation of the world, which is actually a sutra, states the following: ascetic practice and wholesome deeds are good. They leave the mind without regret. When the karmic results ripen in the future, there is constant joy, peace, and happiness. Whether in this life or the next, whenever we observe genuine practitioners, no matter what they are doing, they are always very hardworking. But some people just wait around for others to help them or for others to serve them. They just sit there putting on airs, and you see this among both lay people and monastics. Actually, we shouldn't treat ourselves like royalty. We should be servants dedicated to serving all sentient beings. This kind of asceticism is excellent. Look at Bodhisattva Bhaisajara Raja's past life as Sarvasattva Priyadarshana. He had a great love for ascetic practice. Within the Dharma of the Buddha Kandravairokana Prabhasashur, he was incredibly diligent and single-mindedly sought enlightenment. after 12,000 years had passed. That's how long he practiced these austerities. He practiced this way for many, many years. It was a truly vast period of time. And what was the final result of his practice? He attained the samadhi of manifesting all physical forms. This is a meditative state where one can manifest any form that can be seen or appear. Once he attained this samadhi, his heart was filled with immense joy. He thought to himself, my attainment of this samadhi is entirely due to the merit of hearing the Lotus Sutra. I must now make an offering to the Buddha Kandravairo Kana Prabhasashar and to the Lotus Sutra. You see, when a person gains some merit or reaches a new level of realization, their first thought is deep gratitude toward the Buddha or their spiritual teacher. Secondly, they feel profound gratitude for the Dharma itself. It is the same for all of us. After Patrul Rinpoche attained realization through the treasury of the Dharmadhatu, he was forever grateful to Longchenpa, to his own teacher, and to the treasury of the Dharmadhatu itself. As for our own root guru, it was through Mipham Rinpoche's pointing out instructions that he attained realization. After that realization, for the rest of his life, he held both that text and Mipham Rinpoche in the highest possible reverence. Moreover, these teachings came from Khenchen Tupten Chopel. Everyone is aware of the deep gratitude His Holiness felt toward him. We can often observe the same principle elsewhere. When we see certain disciples who show no respect for their gurus or Dharma teachers, it clearly shows they haven't truly received the grace of the Dharma. It would be fair to say they lack a spiritual connection. This is true within the Dharma and in the secular world as well. If someone has a genuinely grateful heart, whether toward a mentor in the arts or a teacher of worldly knowledge, they will feel that gratitude forever. The Bodhisattva here also deeply desired to make offerings to the Buddha and the Lotus Sutra. With this intention in mind, he entered a state of deep samadhi. He used his meditative power as his chosen way to make an offering. He likely made a solemn vow before entering this samadhi. Then Mandarava and Mahamandarava flowers rained down from the sky, along with a fine powder made from the rarest black sandalwood. These offerings filled the entire sky like massive and billowing dark clouds. Through his meditative power, he brought forth this rain of flowers and fragrant powder. He even made sandalwood from the shores of our world, Jambudvapa, fall like rain. This particular sandalwood is incredibly precious. The text mentions 6 zhu of this fragrance, where zhu is a unit of weight. Its value would be equivalent to all the wealth in the entire Saha world. Just a few ounces of it would be worth as much as all the things in our world combined. He offered this extraordinarily precious sandalwood to the Buddha. By entering into samadhi and manifesting his miraculous powers, he presented these incredible offerings. Once he had finished making the offerings, he emerged from the meditative state. But as he arose from his meditation, he thought to himself, even though I have used my powers to make these offerings to the Buddha, you see, he views the meditation itself as a miraculous offering. It still does not compare to offering my own physical body. Therefore, he decided to offer his body by burning it. He would offer his very self to the Buddha as a supreme sacrifice. This same principle can also be found in the Shurangama Sutra. The Shurangama Sutra also mentions that bodhisattvas might offer their entire bodies, or perhaps just a part of the body, or even burn incense sticks as an offering. Many monastics in the Han tradition follow a similar practice. When they are ordained, they receive those marks on their heads. They are called ordination scars, aren't they? However, it seems that for Master Xuyun, the process of receiving those scars affected his nerves. As a result, he was in a daze for quite a long time. There was some kind of infection at the time. These days, such practices are no longer legally permitted. Nevertheless, the merit behind it remains. According to the Shurangama Sutra, offering one's own body as a sacrifice ensures that many karmic obscurations, including our past misdeeds, will not ripen into suffering. The Buddha said that if he had made such offerings by burning his fingers during his causal stage, he would not have faced so much residual karma after his enlightenment. He wouldn't have had to experience those remaining karmic debts again. The Buddha still had to endure certain effects like eating horse fodder due to his past. But with those offerings, these events would never have occurred. I believe the Shurangama Sutra teaches this as well. From a Buddhist perspective, you can only do this if you have no attachment to your body. However, if attachment still remains, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche strictly forbade practices like burning one's fingers. It is said that a person once prepared to burn their finger as an offering in front of Mipham Rinpoche. Mipham Rinpoche told him that as an ordinary being, if you try to offer your body, you will surely feel regret once the pain becomes unbearable. Regret like that completely destroys any potential merit. So it is best not to attempt this before reaching the first bhumi. While the sutras do mention offering one's fingers or body to the Buddha, this is actually the miraculous display of advanced bodhisattvas. As ordinary beings, we are generally not allowed to do such things. His Holiness also used to tell a story about Karma Chakme Rinpoche. In the biography of Master Xuyun, he wanted to do something to repay his mother's kindness. When Master Xuyun was born, he appeared as a ball of flesh. His mother passed away shortly after his birth. His heart would ache every time he thought of her. Later, while studying the sutras, he learned that burning one's fingers for the Buddha is a way to repay one's parents. When he prepared to make this finger-burning offering, he was staying at the Ashoka temple. He happened to fall very ill during that time. Many people doubted he could go through with it in such a state. There were specific ceremonies held for this in the Han region. Many great masters urged him to reconsider because he was so weak. They warned him that his body couldn't take it. They believed there was simply no way he could survive the process, yet he was absolutely determined to proceed. Many people had to support him as he walked into the shrine hall. Finally, he made the offering by burning his fingers before the Buddha. By the time the ritual ended, he was in a state of realization where he felt no pain at all. Once the finger-burning offering was complete, he no longer needed help walking, and his illness was completely cured. I recall the story being told this way in his chronicles. The details are likely correct, aren't they? Chinese Buddhism indeed has a long history of such practices. Some practitioners have also approached me in the past saying they wanted to burn their fingers as offerings. I was quite alarmed and told them there was no need for that. I told them it would be terrifying for me to watch and likely just as bad for them to go through. I made it clear that I wouldn't allow them to burn their fingers in my presence. I suggested they find some other great master if they were set on it. The Bodhisattva was preparing for his final offering at that time. He felt that merely using miraculous powers to make offerings was not enough. Even the grandest miraculous offerings cannot compare to the sacrifice of one's own body. To prepare himself, he consumed various fragrant oils. He used substances like sandalwood, frankincense, and turpentine. While these were medicinal, they are much like what we call sesame or aromatic oils today. He consumed a wide variety of these fragrant oils. The scent of these oils was incredibly potent. He also used virsha, aloes wood, and frankincense gum, among others. It appears he drank many different types of these oils. He even drank the fragrant oil of kampaka flowers. The text says he did this for 1200 years. While the Tibetan version mentions 12 years, both should be taken as symbolic expressions. This is meant to be a symbolic display of his resolve. In a literal sense, doing this for such a long time would be impossible, so we should view this as a spiritual sign. Drinking oil for that long would simply be too much for anyone. Beyond drinking the oils, he applied them all over his body as well. Then he went before the Tathagata Kandravairakana Prabhasashar. He wrapped himself in heavenly garments and poured even more fragrant oil over them. He was then saturated with these aromatic oils. The text says that through the power of his vows and miraculous abilities, he set his own body ablaze. By the strength of his miraculous power, he made a vow and offered himself as a flame. The Tibetan text doesn't explicitly mention miraculous powers here. He had consumed a massive amount of oil and applied it to every part of his body. His entire being was drenched in it. Finally, he used fire to ignite his body as an offering. The resulting radiance shone across 8 billion worlds as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. At that moment, all the Buddhas spoke in unison to praise him. They said, "Excellent, excellent, son of a noble family. This is true diligence." His level of diligence was truly extraordinary. For most people, the physical body is the ultimate source of all attachment. The human body is where all our clinging begins. Many sutras emphasize this point quite often. The way of the Bodhisattva also teaches us that we must be willing to let go. We should offer our bodies, our enjoyments, and all that we possess. This includes all of our personal wealth as well. We should present these to all the Buddhas without a trace of stinginess. The things people cling to most are their possessions, their bodies, and their roots of virtue. These are the three things we hold on to most dearly. Ultimately, all of these must be offered. Making such offerings is the way to cut through all greed and attachment. The Sutra of the Bodhisattva who has nothing provides similar scriptural evidence for this. That sutra also supports this profound practice of letting go. All forms of miserliness stem from dwelling within the self. Having renounced everything, I now make this offering to the teacher. I renounce every single thing with my own body as the primary gift. Today I present these offerings before the teacher. Several Mahayana sutras discuss the state of having no attachment to the body. This is only possible once a person has reached a certain level of realization. Only then can one renounce the self in such a radical way. As we find in the way of the Bodhisattva, at a certain stage of practice, one views their own body as nothing more than a common vegetable. There is absolutely no sensation of pain or clinging. The entering the middle way also teaches this. Once a practitioner reaches the first bodhisattva bhumi, even if their body is cut into pieces, they feel no pain and instead experience a profound sense of joy. They are moved by the thought that their physical form can finally benefit others. At such a high level of realization, offering the body becomes a reasonable act. That is the perspective I want to share. The Buddha praised this as the most authentic offering one can make to a Tathagata. One might offer flowers, incense, necklaces, or precious powders and ointments. One could even offer heavenly silks, banners, and canopies. Even if you offer the rarest sandalwood from the shores of Jambudvapa, the merit gained from such material gifts is quite limited. It simply cannot compare to the merit of someone who offers their own body. It simply cannot compare to the merit of someone who offers their own body. Even if a person gives away entire countries, cities, or their own families, such generous gifts still fall far short of the merit we are discussing here. The Buddha said, "Noble son, this offering of your physical body is the greatest gift of all. It is the most supreme among every possible form of generosity. This is what it means to make a true Dharma offering to the Tathagatas." You see, the offering of the body is given a special status here. When we speak of the greatest possible gifts, we are usually referring to the gift of Dharma, such as teaching and explaining the truth. However, this specific kind of body offering is also considered a remarkably profound form of Dharma offering because it stems from a heart that has completely severed all greed and clinging. What has the practitioner actually gained? He has attained the supreme Dharma of wisdom that is free from dualistic grasping. This is exactly why it is called a Dharma offering to the Tathagata. Once he had said this, all the Buddhas fell silent. Just as Yuanshan described, they stopped speaking. The other party became completely silent. Are you following me? The other party remained silent. The Buddha said no more. He offered his praise and then grew quiet. The fire of his body burned for 1200 years. After that time, his body was entirely consumed. After Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana had completed this supreme Dharma offering, he passed away from that world. This concludes the first phase of the story. As we just saw, he was standing before the Tathagata. During this earliest previous life of Bodhisattva Vaisajaraja, he had already offered his entire physical body to the Buddha. The fire burned for an incredibly long time. Of course, we should view this as a symbolic display. In our ordinary world, a human body would not take nearly that long to burn. It would be over much sooner than that. It would be gone in a few minutes or perhaps half an hour. Therefore, the duration is part of the miraculous manifestation. That is likely the best way to explain it. He was later reborn in the realm of Buddha Kandraverokana Prabhasashra. The Buddha had not yet entered Parinirvana at that time. He was born into a royal family as the son of King Vimaladatta. When he appeared in this world again, he was already seated in the Vajra posture. His birth into this household was a miraculous transformation. Since he was born through transformation, he did not have a biological father. The Tibetan text mentions that he spoke in verse to his parents. He addressed them through sacred poetry. Because he was born into the king's household, the royal family was regarded as his parents. Strictly speaking, they were not his true parents since he was not born from a womb. Since he was not born from a womb, they were parents in name only. Nevertheless, he showed them great respect. Having been born into the king's family, he addressed the king as his father. Great king, you should know what has occurred today. I once practiced deep austerities before the Tathagata, and what did I gain from those practices? I attained the samadhi that can manifest all physical forms. By mastering this samadhi, he could appear anywhere without any difficulty. He could manifest or be born in any way he chose. He said that he had been extremely diligent by renouncing the body he once cherished. Now I have returned to this world once again. His past austerities had allowed him to attain samadhi. Furthermore, he had shown incredible diligence. He had already given his own body away. He had offered his physical form to the Tathagata to be consumed by fire. After explaining this, he continued to speak to the king. The Tathagata Kandra Vairo Kanaprabha Sashra is still present in this world. I must go and make offerings to him immediately. And what is my goal in doing so? I wish to attain the Dharan for understanding the languages of all sentient beings. I want to master every language, including English, Chinese, and Tibetan. In contrast, some of us study English for just 2 days and then promptly give it all back to the teacher. Others start learning Tibetan, but as they struggle along, they end up just repeating the basic alphabet Kaka Ganga a few times. This happens simply because we have not yet attained that specific Dharan Vau. Back then, the child declared from a very young age that he wanted to master every language. He wanted to understand not just human speech but the languages of all sentient beings. His goal was to become fluent in every kind of sound. He also expressed a deep desire to hear the Lotus Sutra. This particular version of the Lotus Sutra was immense. It contained 800,000 myriads of kotis of nayutas of Kankara verses. The Kankara verses are those composed of 7 syllables per line. The Bimbara verses are made up of 5 syllables, while the Aksobhya consists of verses with only 4 syllables. Generally, our verses follow a 7-syllable structure. However, they can vary widely, with some having 9 or even 10 syllables. Many of them follow a symmetrical pattern like that. You can see that the Lotus Sutra contains a staggering number of verses. As I mentioned earlier, these massive numbers may be symbolic. Whenever we hear about someone wanting to receive so many verses, it highlights the incredible magnitude of this Lotus Sutra. The child also told the king that he must go and make offerings to his Tathagata. After he finished speaking, the power of his merit manifested. He sat upon a platform made of the 7 jewels. He then ascended into the sky to a height of 7 tala trees. It was much like a helicopter taking off. This reminds me of what I mentioned earlier. I previously compared the tala tree to an unmanned drone. However, he was not flying the tree but was seated on a jeweled platform. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a woman who is a pilot. I asked her many questions about the different aspects of aviation. She is truly an expert in her field. I seem to have this particular habit. Whenever I meet someone new, I always ask about their way of life. If I meet a beggar, I ask what it is like to live as one. When I meet a doctor, I ask about their professional situation. When I cross paths with a pilot, I ask all about the experience of flying. So if I had been able to meet this child, I would have asked him how it felt to sit on that jeweled platform. I would want to know about soaring through the sky and descending before the Buddha. These things truly did happen. The world contains all sorts of extraordinary phenomena. We sometimes think these events are inconceivable, but they are not as impossible as they seem. In fact, the drones I see online these days are truly amazing. They work much like the inconceivable miraculous powers described in the sutras. There is nothing solid inside, as it is all a matter of dependent origination. Everything operates through computer programming and technology. In the past, we would have thought these things were impossible. The idea of a human sitting on a throne in the sky seemed far-fetched. Yet looking at where we are headed, it is clearly within the realm of possibility. It all comes down to how that throne is designed. It could take the form of a traditional throne or a completely different vessel. They even say the flying vehicles in Dubai are manufactured in China. So many of the inconceivable things described in the sutras are now part of our daily lives. We encounter these incredible situations every day. Modern life is full of such wonders. If you could explain these technologies to people from ancient times, they would dismiss it all as mere superstition. They would think we were lying and refuse to believe a single word. Even today, certain aspects of our lifestyle would baffle the older generation. If we tried to explain these things to our elderly parents, such as our grandmothers and grandfathers, they would find it very hard to grasp. They would likely think such things are simply impossible. Just look at the things we take for granted now. Think about how easy it is to use ride-hailing apps in the city. Our reliance on satellite positioning is another prime example. These technologies are truly mind-blowing. In this world of ours, anything is possible. Since all phenomena are empty of inherent nature, many things can manifest when the right conditions come together. On this point, I have a sincere hope for all of you. When we study the profound principles of Buddhism, we should not just dismiss them as impossible. Don't think of these teachings as mere legends or mythology. Please try not to view them that way. The truth is that we are living in a world like that right now. We are genuinely living lives that would have seemed like myths in the past. We often don't even understand the mechanics behind our own reality. So many things function beyond our immediate comprehension. But since we are part of this world, we have to admit the truth. There is so much about existence that we simply don't know. We still enjoy everything we see and hear, experiencing it all in the present moment. Yet we remain ignorant of how it all works so quickly. We don't truly understand why things are the way they are. Now let's return to the child we were discussing. He sat upon his platform of the 7 jewels. He soared through the air until he reached the Buddha's presence. Upon his arrival, he bowed deeply, joined his palms, and began to praise the Buddha. O Buddha of most wondrous countenance, your radiant light illuminates the entire universe. I have made offerings to you in my past, and now I have returned once more to pay my respects in person. At this point in the story, you will notice that the child kept the same name from his previous life. He was still known by the same name, Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana. Once he had finished reciting these verses, he spoke to the Buddha. Bhagavat, O Bhagavat, I see that you are still here in this world. You have not yet entered parinirvana. I have gone through an entire life cycle and returned, yet here you are still. For reasons we may not fully understand, the Tathagata Kandravairokana Prabhasashar then addressed Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana. Noble son, the time has finally come for me to enter parinirvana. It is a bit ironic from our perspective. One might wonder if he would have stayed longer if I hadn't said anything. As soon as he remarked on the Buddha still being in the world, the Buddha replied that while he was present, this would be the very day he would depart. This reminds me of an experience from my childhood. There was a tulku in the city of Luhuo. My father had immense faith in him. I believe I have mentioned him before. His name was Ritse Rinpoche. I kept pleading with my father to take me to meet him. He refused for many years, but finally agreed to take me one time. We set out on horseback for his home in a very remote area. His family were simple farmers. When we finally reached the tulku's doorway, the sound of people crying could be heard from within. They told us that the tulku had already passed away. Just as I reached the door, they said he had only just breathed his last. My father and I ended up staying at their home for 3 days. His body was laid out right there. The tulku had instructed that his body must be cast into the river. A short while later, a massive earthquake struck Luhuo. Countless bodies were indeed thrown into that very river. It seemed he truly had a profound and hidden intention behind his request. I never got to meet him in life. I only saw his remains. In contrast, this bodhisattva did manage to see his teacher. The Buddha said that the time had come for him to leave this world. He asked the bodhisattva to prepare his bed. I am preparing to enter parinirvana tonight. He had only just arrived when the Buddha manifested passing away that same night. The Buddha then gave these final instructions to the bodhisattva. Noble son, I entrust the entire Buddha Dharma to your care. I also entrust the Bodhisattvas and great disciples to you. This includes the Dharma of supreme perfect enlightenment. I commit to you the jeweled worlds of the cosmos, the sacred platforms, and the devas who serve me. Everything is now being placed in your hands. I also entrust my relics to you for after my passing. It is my wish that you take these relics and build many reliquary stupas throughout the entire world. Once he had finished giving these instructions, once the Buddha had concluded his address to the Bodhisattva, he entered parinirvana that very same night. At this moment, Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana was overcome with profound grief as he witnessed the Buddha's passing. His devotion to the Buddha was truly immense. He gathered sandalwood to be used as firewood for the cremation of the Tathagata's physical body. After the cremation was complete, he collected many sacred relics. In total, there were 84,000 relics. He placed these 84,000 relics into precious jeweled vases and built 84,000 stupas to house them. These stupas reached as high as the triple world and were magnificent in appearance, adorned with various jeweled canopies and bells. Let me share a little more about this. Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana then thought to himself, even though I have already made these offerings, my heart still does not feel satisfied. I should make a direct offering to the relics themselves. He then spoke to all of his disciples, including the Nagas, Yaksas, and every sentient being present. He told them all to be single-minded in their focus. Today I will make a special offering to the relics of Tathagata Kandravairo Kanaprabhasashar. Once he had spoken these words, he went before the 84,000 stupas. He set fire to his own arms, which were adorned with the merit of 100 blessings. In his previous life, he had offered up his entire body. In this lifetime, he chose to make the offering with both his arms. He continued this offering for 72,000 years. This act inspired countless Shravakas and an immeasurable, incalculable number of people to awaken the aspiration for supreme perfect enlightenment. What exactly did they all achieve? They attained the samadhi of manifesting all physical forms. At that time, the devas, humans, asuras, and other beings saw that their bodhisattva no longer had either of his arms. They were all deeply distressed and heartbroken. They cried out that the bodhisattva was their teacher and guide. Today, he has lost both his arms and his body is no longer whole. In their eyes, he had become a disabled person. They all wept in bitter sorrow. This is much like how we see things in the ordinary world. When we hold major Dharma gatherings, especially in places like India and Nepal, you often see many people who are missing their arms. Or perhaps they have no legs, which is quite common. Perhaps they too made such offerings in the past. Sometimes when we see beggars on the street in that state, it can be very heartbreaking. But at that moment, the Bodhisattva made a declaration of truth before the Great Assembly. He declared that by renouncing both arms, he would surely attain the golden body of a Tathagata. If my sacrifice is in vain or based on a falsehood, if the vow I have made is not sincere or true, but it is indeed true, if my intention is pure, if this act is truly not false, let my arms be restored as they were before. As soon as he finished speaking, his arms were naturally restored. This miracle was the direct result of the Bodhisattva's profound and pure wisdom. At that moment, the entire cosmos quaked in 6 different ways. A rain of celestial flowers began to fall from the sky. Every deva and human present witnessed this unprecedented marvel. Then the Buddha spoke. Let me bring this story to a brief conclusion. The Buddha asked Bodhisattva Nakshatra Raja Samkusumita Bhijna for his thoughts. Do not think that Bodhisattva Sarvasattva Priyadarshana was someone else. He is none other than Bodhisattva Bhaisajaraja, who stands before us today. You were just asking about him, were you not? This is the kind of person he truly is. The number of times he has renounced his body as an offering amounts to immeasurable hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of nayutas. The Buddha further explained to the Bodhisattva, If anyone who has awakened the aspiration for enlightenment is able to burn even a single finger or a toe as a sincere offering to a Buddha's stupa, their merit surpasses that of offering up entire cities, families, or children. It is greater than offering all the lands of the cosmos, including the mountains, forests, rivers, and finest jewels. When you compare the two, the merit of offering one's own body is extraordinarily vast. Suppose someone filled the entire universe with the 7 jewels and offered them to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Arhats. While that merit would indeed be very great, it still falls short. It does not compare to the merit of upholding even a single verse of the Lotus Sutra. Many of us wish we had precious jewels to offer, but we have none. Even when we do have a little, our miserly nature often gets in the way. We might offer a tiny ring or a small pair of earrings while thinking, this is real gold, this is white gold, make sure you don't lose it. So even when they make an offering to a Buddha image, their attachment is still right there with them. They keep thinking how valuable it is and that it must not be lost. But all of that is nothing compared to the merit of upholding the Lotus Sutra. Filling the entire cosmos with treasures simply cannot match the great merit of preserving this sutra. The Buddha then gave an analogy to the Bodhisattva. Among all the rivers and bodies of water in the world, the ocean is the most supreme. The Lotus Sutra holds that same position within the Buddha Dharma. Among all the teachings ever spoken by the Tathagata, the Lotus Sutra is the most profound of all. It is just like the vast ocean in this analogy. Among all the earth mountains and the black mountains, including the lesser and greater Kakravada and the 10-jeweled mountains, Mount Sumeru stands supreme above them all. The same principle applies to all the sutras taught by the Buddha. Among every scripture in existence, the Lotus Sutra is the most exalted. These are truly the Buddha's own Vajra words. This is how I look at it. From last year until now, we have all had the precious opportunity to study and practice the Lotus Sutra together. This is a truly remarkable achievement. Many people define success by worldly milestones. They might say they bought a car for their child. They feel they can die without regrets once that is done. Whether those things truly bring lasting peace, I cannot say. But when it comes to encountering the Lotus Sutra, we can honestly say that we can die without a single regret. The analogy of the mountains holds true here as well. Among all the stars in the night sky, the moon deity is the most prominent. The Lotus Sutra is just the same. Out of millions of kinds of Dharma jewels, this one shines with the greatest brilliance. Just as the sun deity can dispel all darkness, this sutra performs the same function. It has the power to destroy the darkness of all unwholesome deeds. Among all lesser kings, the wheel-turning king is the most supreme. The position of the sutras is no different. Among every scripture, the Lotus Sutra stands at the very top. Within the heaven of the 33, Chakra is the king of the Devas. The same can be said for this collection of teachings. Among all sutras, the Lotus Sutra is the king of sutras. Consider the realm of the Brahma worlds. Lord Brahma regards himself as the father of all Devas. He holds this view because of his great age. When he first came into being, there were no other Devas yet. This led him to feel like the father of the entire heavenly host. This sutra holds a similar paternal role. For all the noble ones, whether they have more to learn or not, and for all those who have awakened bodhicitta, the Lotus Sutra has been their ancient and constant guide. Countless Buddhas of the past have studied this very teaching. It would be such a pity if we did not take the time to study it. If we have immersed ourselves in this sutra before we pass, that is a truly wonderful thing. Among all beings, including stream enterers and once-returners, as well as non-returners, arhats and pratyeka Buddhas, the pratyeka Buddha is considered foremost among arhats. The status of this sutra is exactly the same. Among everything spoken by the Tathagatas, Bodhisattvas, or even the Shravakas, the Lotus Sutra remains the most supreme of all scriptures. The ability to uphold this sutra carries the same weight. A person who does so is foremost among all sentient beings. Bodhisattvas are considered foremost among Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. The same ranking applies to the sutras as well. Among all the sutras, this one is the absolute foremost. Just as the Buddha is the king of Dharma among all people, this scripture is the king of sutras. We will stop here for today. I believe that this explanation was clear to everyone.
Sonam dei tamse
Gana Jirano Chupai Chupun Tsulen Droa Droa
Bandangara Badna Sadarda Bandangara Badna Sada Bandangara Badna Sadarda